that job, depend on how is now the dependency. You might have added models, changed names, and whatever. So
Hmm.
you don't have to maintain that. It will look at what is the dependency graph now and run all the model that you need. And
Okay.
then you can run whenever you want.
No, fine, fine. So we have built this. Now my question was, if we have to uh, migrate to another platform, for example, from Snowflake to Databricks or vice versa, can I export and import these over there and I don't need to
Nothing
write any?
changes. So as long if you have the same model,
Yeah.
probably the SQL is almost the same because they are very close in SQL. So and the dependency are the same, the comment is also going to be the same. And so
So,
you can just switch the connection and it's probably going to work.
so, so, so as you correctly mentioned, both queries,
I
SQLs
don't
are.
know why you would do that in that way, but still.
No, no, I'm just coming towards a strategic decision. For example, someone is on one platform, organization strategic decision comes, move to another one. So when you migrate, do you have to migrate the code as well, or you have to change the code because Databricks has little bit different SQL as compared to Snowflake or XYZ. It let's not name
Yeah,
the.
that's the point. So
Yeah.
as you have to do the changes so that your SQL runs,
SQL has to
of
be
course.
particular to that database lah.
Yes. Yeah, because you write the SQL for the database, so it's not an abstract. That's what I mean. It's thin. It
Okay.
runs the SQL that you write or that
Okay.
you generate, so
Hmm.
you know exactly what's going to happen. And that's, I think, it's cool. It's really the useful thing, so that you can use whatever extension your
Okay.
data platform allows you to use
Hmm.
in and bad. So you know if you are at risk of, okay, we are trying this platform, but maybe in 2 years we are some other place, try to use more standard SQL. If you are, in a way, quite well invested in a platform that give you, for example, Snowflake has time joins, is an extension. So, but of course, it makes working with historical data much simpler. And so I would say, if you are sure enough that you can keep using it, why go in the old, very complicated and slow way of doing historical joins when you have a construct in the language from that database that allows you to make it easier and much quicker? So use
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
But of course, if you migrate a model that has that kind of code to a platform that doesn't implement that SQL extension, of course, you will have to recode that specific piece of SQL. And then if everything else is generic SQL that works out of the box, you just don't touch it.
So actually, this is the good part, which I understand that you have to use the same SQL syntax which a platform support. It's not a DBT own syntax. It's a
Yes,
platform syntax. So this
yes.
is good. Okay, now so we have to really went into technicalities. We have a time check of around 15 odd minutes. So I normally keep it 45 minutes to 60 minutes. So we won't go more than 60 minutes. So let's go a little bit towards metadata side of things, right? How it maintain its metadata and how can it generate data lineage as well? Can it connect to external databases?
What do you mean external database in this
Oh,
context?
sorry, external tools, metadata tools. So we need.
Well, you don't really need, because, for example, one of the native things in dbt is that you have the lineage, and I'm thinking about dbt cloud. So, and that's why I'm saying it makes a lot of sense if you can to use dbt cloud, because when you are developing live, you have the dependency graph right in your IDE. And so that's why it's so important, because you see, because the workflow, how you build things, depends on the dependency graph. And
Mhm.
so the lineage, this dependency graph, the lineage is your DBT application.
Oh, it's
So
showing
that's why
itself.
it's so central. And it's really part, and you have these two ways. One is this, the lineage, so the actual dependency. The other one is how you organize the model file, the SQL files, because you can, of course, you have an editor, so you have files, you can organize in folders. And so these are the two ways that you can interact to select which file to run. So that is really important. And also because you can use that also on where, for example, to materialize. So how to decide, I want to materialize this in this database and this schema. You can, and that's because that's all just metadata. You just configure and decide with a very simple YAML-based configuration. Okay, what is in this folder, you put in this schema. What is this other, you put in, well, maybe a different database and in a different schema.
Mm-hmm.
It's very declarative. It's very simple. And then it takes care, that's quite thin, but you just change this little thing that would be a pain to change in 200. You want to rename a data mart. It's going to be a pain to rename 200 pieces of
Yeah.
SQL.
So it's a very relevant question. So you have multiple data models from one place to another one. Let's say a column name changes in source. You have to bring this column change in all this chain
It
from
depends how you've done the SQL. It
uh,
depends. If you have select star, you're fine.
yeah.
But if you have select my column name,
You
well,
have to go and change it manually.
you change to have instead of underscores, you did something else.
Yeah.
Well, you have to change it because the SQL need to change.
Yeah.
So that's why you also want to, of course, there are good practice. So in general, select star is not the best when you are at the end because you want to know what you are delivering in a data mart. You want to really pick by hand. But when you are in the between, that you know what you have picked up from the sources, and you just want to pretty much pass everything plus what you're transforming, that is where you will focus. For everything else, you can just say a star, and maybe in database, again, database specific extension, where you can say select star, exclude, well, I take out this 5 because maybe this 5 I'm redefining, I'm doing something in this model, but for the rest, just pass it over as it is. So it's also a way to build some SQL that is easier to maintain. Because if I change, let's say that it was customer name with no spacing, and I want to become customer underscore name. Well, if I'm not doing really nothing with customer name and just passing on from the landing table to the dimension, I can just pass it on. Maybe just at the end, I will have, okay, I rename in the landing customer underscore table. I will have to pick up the customer underscore table column because I want to name them. So it depends on you how you wrote your SQL.
Okay, awesome. So this is
But you
so
have model lineage and column level lineage. And so while you develop, you have the model lineage, so dependency between the models. But if you go to the DBT Explorer, that is the documentation that automatically generated, you have actually the lineage by column. So each column shows what from which column it's derived.
just
That's
like
an
just like
enterprise only feature,
Mhm.
but if you are serious about DBT, you are going to have the enterprise. So if you really work for professional
Yeah,
use,
the good part, what I am hearing about DBT, as you correctly mentioned, it makes this ELT transform, it pick up this transformed piece and make it really, really light. Because when we think about ETL or ELT tool, it's a very big tool. Informatica, SSIS, ADF, these are very heavy tools. Although nowadays most of them are going to a pay-as-go, but it's a proper tool. This one is a very thin and it's focused on only transformation, very specific. And you are right, 90 or 95% we only do this piece, not rest of the piece, right? Okay, 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 fair enough.
and so you see, and then I think that the other really, really important part that DBT, where is really helping to get into software engineering, is that makes very easy to add proper testing. So, for example, one key issue that we always had with whether it is ETL, ELT, whatever, is that sometimes source system change what they give us. They,
Hmm.
if they add columns, okay, but it might be a problem because if you are reading a CSV that has 3 more columns, it might still blow up.
Yeah,
Or they change names of column or they remove columns. And
yeah.
that's one thing. And then, so you can have tests on the sources. So you declare in DBT what you do. If you are reading something that is not generated by DBT, that is generally like the landing table or something that is done by other tools, because you might have other tools that already create data. You declare a source on that. It means this is the starting point where I read. some data that is not handled by me. And then you can define tests, or at every step on every model, you can define tests like this column must not be null, if this column or this combination of columns must be unique, or I want to check the reference integrity between this model and that model with this table in that table, so that you know that you have a good referential integrity, or the value in this column is in this set of values. Maybe you have a state column and you allow only 5, 10 strings or numbers. And then, of course, you can add many more complex tests. For example, not null, maybe where the date is in the last year, because you know that in the past, okay, sometimes we had bad data, that's fine, but at least for the new one, let's keep it good. And of course, you can, and these are really simple, it's just one line of YAML pretty much. Or you can even write your own this kind of generic test that you can apply everywhere. For example, I have one that when I ingest the data in the landing table, I also want to check that because I store from which file the data is coming, I want to be sure that all in the landing table, there is data for all the files that I find in the directory. And because you can't do that with SQL, for example, in Snowflake, you can also do a test that, okay, my landing table has at least one entry for each file that I find in this folder, so that you are reasonably sure that you have ingested everything. Of course, you might have a false positive or false negative if you have an empty file, because you have a file there, but you don't have data.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And then you can put the minimum dimension, you can filter that out. But, the idea is that you can build also these tests that are generic, apply everywhere, so that it's very easy to test for everything that you want to be sure it is as expected. And as a last resort, you can always even just write a test that it's a SQL query. For example, you can have some invariants that in your order, you want to be sure that the total of the order is equal to the sum of the rows. You can just write a piece of SQL, and that's run automatically whenever you build your order line model. You just declared this one, and each run along with your code, so that you are sure, and that brings to a very totally different level the quality that you get out of your ETL or ELT from what you had in the past. Because in the past, doing this kind of testing was cumbersome, time-consuming, manual, and so you did sometimes.
Exactly. So
You didn't solve up the issue.
Yeah, so we have a time check of 8 minutes. I have two more questions. One is related to when it's a SaaS model you mentioned, right? When it is a SaaS model, when you run it, it uses the compute. For example, if it's Snowflake, it uses Snowflake clusters, right? And if it is database, it uses Databricks cluster. It does not pull data into their SaaS environment. No, SaaS is
No,
only
it's
for
also a matter of security. It's also a matter of security. So the
yes.
data doesn't go to the
Snowflake.
DBT.
So DBT
It
doesn't go there.
stays in your cloud. Only the SQL is run. Of course, in the IDE, you have a preview function so that you can run and the first 500 rows are returned and show you. So in that case, but that's a specific application when you are running the query to see the results. It's like any developer can run queries on the database he's working on. So then it's not going to the DBT server for storage or for processing. It's just that they go to DBT infrastructure to show on your web page.
Yeah, which is fine. My last question, if I end up coming more, but this is one of the licensing. How the licensing works? Is it core?
Well, I heard that they have plans to do some changes, but the licensing is pretty straightforward. So you have the DBT core that is free, is open source and free. So you can just download and use it. That's it. Simpler than that is not possible.
And it has all the features of DBT
It has, it has all the core features. So you can do pretty much everything that you can do with DBT core, less some nice to do things. But in the end, it can do everything. Then on the DBT cloud side, you have only pretty much 3 layers. One is the developer, one person, one project for free forever. So that's the way to try it out, to test or to run your own pet project. Then you have the team that I don't remember how many, but I think it's one project, 8 users. And I will not disclose the price because it might be even changed. So it's not my problem how much it costs. And then you have the enterprise that I think it starts from 5 to or 8 or 10 users. And then it costs a little bit more, but it has all the features. So for example, one of the, I think, best improvement that I have brought in the last years are these column level lineage that's available only for the enterprise users. And also this DBT mesh, where you can have reference across DBT projects. So you have built, let's say that you have built your customer dimension in a master data DBT project. So you have the customer master data dimension. You can just reference that from any other DBT project you have, so that you just point to that. You don't have to duplicate anything. You don't have to do anything. You just point that, and then DBT knows how to get that data from where it is stored in the database. Of course, you also need the database level access, because they work at 2 different levels, but that's very powerful.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you have contracts and so on. But for example, contracts and other technical things, they also exist for the DBT core. So you can use them also in DBT core. The fact that you can use this reference, that is something, and you have the lineage in the Explorer that is connected between these projects, then this is something in the enterprise. But I would say, if you are a company and you are investing in, if you have a data engineer, it's an expensive thing to have a data engineer. If you have multiple, you are not talking about peanuts money. So it's worth investing in the DBT cloud, because you have, I would say, you save so much from building these otherwise tooling for orchestrating, auditing, connecting things. So you just start with the software as a service that gives you everything pretty much working out of the box.
Okay. So it's a user-based license. It's not a compute-based license. It's not a transaction-based license. It's a user-based license.
Yeah, it is. I heard some time ago that we're thinking to go into more of a usage license, how many models you are going to build, but I've not heard any real change in some time. So it might be that it's coming or not coming. But for now, the user-based.
Yeah. So you can't disclose, of course, numbers, because numbers are their numbers. But help me to understand the comparison. Again, not numbers. Is it much cheaper as compared to others, or its cost goes near to others?
Well, yes, it's so the enterprise license is in the few hundreds per user per month. So it's, I would say, very cheap. It's, if you compare to any of the professional tools like Informatica,
$1,000 per user. It is in hundreds. Okay, much cheaper.
So this is 100 per month. So let's say it's maybe 2,000-3,000 a year. I don't know the exact numbers because that's not my problem. So I know, but I know the specific cases that we have negotiated, and you know.
Yeah. Which is fine. I think this is good. Again, we have a time check of 3 minutes. So Roberto, it was a great session, and actually I really understand. I had few questions of my own, which you have answered, and people were asking me. I did Google, or nowadays nobody Google, people do Chat GPT. I tried that, but until unless you don't ask from someone who has done it, you can't trust internet data anymore.
Yeah, nowadays you don't really know if it's true, if it's truish, or it's AI.
So as the other day I wrote an article that internet is going to die and brand net is going to come. Means it's so much junk on internet, you can't trust anything until unless someone trustworthy person has done it and they give their own view.
Well, there will be, in a way, maybe a revival of real blogging or personal sites where you trust author.
Yeah, that's what I call brand net. So it will be brand. If I need
For
to know.
example, last week I created the pragmaticminutedata.org because I wrote a book, but not everybody wants to read the book. But I've also been asked so many times in the last month about data mesh and how to do data mesh with DBT and things like that. Okay, I said, okay, it's maybe good that I start to write this about pragmatic data platform that I have created so that people can easily look at it, get the basics of how it works, and also about this data mesh. So maybe we could have another talk another time about DBT and data mesh, or in general data mesh, and how you can do that also with a simple tool like DBT, because it's really so simple. Some of these things, they are so simple if you really look down at the core elements that you need and you remove all the hype, all the things. So in 2 sentences, data mesh, you have to be ready for an organizational change. Then the technology to do it's in a way simple to adopt if you already have a good way of working. So it's nothing revolutionary, it's revolutionary on the organization. But if you don't want to change your organization, why go into a data?
So we can definitely have, as you already proposed, we can have a session, another session. I would love to have it maybe somewhere in June, May, June, 4 or 5 months from here, data mesh with DBT. I will book your calendar and we can do that. Thank you, Roberto. We have all 60 minutes. I don't want to take your more time. We have committed for 60 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you
Have a
very
nice day.
much. Have a nice day. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.